Hello everyone. It's going to be a very short day today, probably like less than half an hour. All we got to do today is go over two more questions that we skipped last class. In last class, we went over the practice midterm and did like four of the questions. So we got like a couple more to go. Right? And for the folks who are watching the recording, if you want good practice, I recommend trying it out yourself. Like, refresh your notebook, start from scratch, and see if you can implement all of the functions without copying down the solution. So, we are going to go over the solution for the last couple ones. But yeah, as a good practice, you want to try it out yourself. Otherwise, you're not really going to get much from it. Right? Copying down the answer, it's not going to exercise the problem solving. All right, so let's jump into this rest of this practice midterm. So continuing from last class, right, I already have it over here. So I have a folder called practice midterm, and then here's the exam. Now, this is the notebook that contains our functions definition, right, and a couple of testing cells, right. And once again, the midterm, there is a canvas associated with it, which is where we're going to do the submission. So I'm going to load up this canvas right here. Take the quiz again. All right. So we did most of these. I think we left off on a couple questions. It was number three. Yeah, we didn't do number 3. And also the last one, which is some HTML table thing. All right, so let's do question 3 and question 6 together. Once again, if you're on the recording, please try it out yourself before copying down the solution. All right, so I'm going to switch back and forth again between the notebook and the canvas. Right, so in the notebook, we want to write a function called something. Right? Oh, here, you know what? I need to run this first cell. So I'm going to rerun this first cell, which loads in the auto grading capabilities. So I'm going to run. There we go. Okay, so let's look at the question number 3. Right, number 3 was asking write a function called list first 5. Right, and it takes no arguments. Right, you see how there's nothing in the parentheses. Right, so there's it does take an argument. My bad. It takes one argument that is a list, right? And then what this function should do is go through the first 5 elements in the list and sum them up. Right, so with what we know so far, we know how to index lists. So let's talk about that in a bit. Right, but let's get this first part set up. Right, write a function called list first 5 that takes one argument, data. Okay, so right away we should be able to define a function called list first 5. Right, and then it takes an argument called data. Right, so this is a argument that represents a list. So I'm gonna do the minimal credit real quick, which is the docstring. Right, the purpose is to calculate the sum of the first 5 elements in the list. Right, there's one argument, which is data. Right, data is a list of numbers, floats to be more specific. Right, and then the output of this function is expected to return the sum. Right, returns the sum of the first 5 elements. Right, so there we go. All we did was copy down the question. So let's go ahead and implement it. Right, so before we even implement it, I'm going to pretend to invoke the function so folks can see the purpose of it. Right, so imagine that we're invoking the function down here. Right? Okay, I'm going to comment this out because this was from last class. Right? We already finished this. So pretend that we have a test list. Right? Just it doesn't matter what you call it, but pretend we have a list of 5 numbers. Right? Like I'm just going to put some random numbers here: 3, 7, 1, 2, and then 10. Right? It doesn't matter. Now the goal of this function is if we were to pass this test list into that function, right? So the function is called list first 5. Right? If we were to pass this in, right, the result of this function should evaluate to the sum of these numbers. Okay, so let's get that up. All right, so this test list will be sent up into this function here, right? Data. So we need to work on this data list. Okay, and return some result. All right, so for now, I'm just gonna return 0, just just so we can build it slowly. Right, this is kind of like building from the bottom up. Right, so I'm just gonna return 0 for now and kind of test it. All right, so I'm gonna press play. Okay, so this will load the function in. All right, so loaded the function, and let's test it. Okay, so I'm gonna run this here now. Press play, and then yeah, you see it says 0, right, which makes sense because this function returns 0 no matter what we pass in. Right, and typically I would store this into some variable, just because this is returning a value. So it would be good to capture it and then print it later, right? Because sometimes you might need the result for later. Okay, there we go. See, same thing. Okay, we need to update the function so it actually indexes all of these elements and adds them. Right, with what we know so far, we can access elements in the list, right, with the square bracket operator. Right, so you might remember that you can. I'm going to do it in 2 lines. So, let's say I have a variable called answer. Right? It doesn't matter what you call it, but I'm going to set it equal to the sum, the first 5 elements. Right, so the first, with what we know so far, we can index each individual element, right? Like we could say data 0, right? This is the first element in that list, and then we can add another one, right? Data 1, right, all the way up to 4. Data 3, and then plus data 4. Right, so this is the first 5 elements, right? 0 to 4, and then this should calculate the sum, and then we can just return it. All right, so let's go ahead and test it. So I'm gonna press play. All right, there we go. We loaded the function in, and we can go ahead and test it. All right, so going down here, let's rerun this function call. All right, so I'll press play, and it prints 23. Right, 23 sounds about right. 3 plus 7 plus all of these is, yeah, 23. Right, so there we go. We verified that this function works. We can probably ask for feedback on this bottom checker. Right, so let's ask for feedback. I'm going to run this. And it says list first 5. Right, list first 5. There is, yeah, we passed all the tests, meaning that we're probably good for submitting. Right, so once you're verified, you can pretty much copy this function into Canvas. Right, so copy and then paste it into this Canvas text box. Right, it is a little redundant, but it's for safety. So there is the submission, and then we can format it so it's in a nicer font. So I'll format it right here, pre-format, and there we go. Let me zoom out a bit. Oh, can I go back to the? Yeah, I can go back. Right over here. Yeah, the testing cell. So we pretty much created a test list. Okay. Okay. Hopefully people kind of see what's going on here. This function worked with any list, right? Like if I were to change, well, not actually every list, but if I were to change some numbers here, it should update it accordingly, right? Like if I change this to a 100, right, it should change this result, which looks about right, the sum of all these numbers. So yeah, I want to bring up a pitfall that I see a lot. Some folks would end up hard coding the list in their function. Like some people would Some people would go up into the function and then hard code data. Right? So some people would say, oh, data is equal to this list. Right? So you don't want to do this because the function is no longer general. Right? The function will now only return a single result. Right? So no matter what we pass into data, it's going to be overwritten by this other list. Right? So this is called hard coding, which makes the function not general anymore. So yeah, make sure not to hard code things. I hope that makes sense. Huh? Oh yeah, yeah. So this test list, this is for testing the answer. Yeah, this test list is for so test list becomes data when it gets sent up into the function. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't matter what this is called. You can actually. Oh, these are just random numbers. 371. Right? These are just random numbers that we're using to test the accuracy of our function. Yeah, so you can put whatever. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Someone in Zoom chat. But does the name of the list test list, not data? How does the function know which list? Oh yeah, good question. The function knows which list it is because the way we call the function, right? So when we call it and put the test list as a input, right? A data gets initialized to test list, right? So just to reiterate that, right, we don't have to use a test list here. Right? So I'm just going to comment this out. Right? You can actually just put any list in here, right? You can hard code any list. Like let's go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Right, so this is just a list. When we call the list first 5 function, data gets initialized to this list. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's all good. Yeah, functions are takes a bit to get used to, but yeah, it's really good stuff, right? So it's like a general way of representing a solution. Okay, cool. Hope that makes sense. Let's see. Oh, another thing in the Zoom chat. So data is just like a default variable name for lists. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The name of the parameter doesn't actually matter, right? You could call this, you could call this a something, right? Meaning that you have to change these to something as well. Right? Pretty much, this is just a name which gets initialized when we call the function. All right. So data. There we go. Yeah. Good stuff. Can we make the return answer? Oh yeah, yeah. This return statement, we're returning answer because that's the sum. Right? We set the sum equal to these. So this name doesn't actually matter as well. Right? You could call this something, and then just return that something. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, and for even shorter, you actually don't have to create a variable for it. I mean, you can actually just return this value. Right? Yeah, yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. But I'm going to keep it in 2 separate statements just so it's a little more readable. All right. Let's see. Okay, we got one more to go. So we just finished the number 3. Uh, there's one more, which is the last one, right? This is the harder one. So with the oh no, not this one. There it is. All right. So let's work on this one together. Once again, if you're on the recording, please pause it and try it out yourself. Right? It'll exercise the problem-solving skills a little more. All right. After this, we're going to be done. So this one's a little trickier. It's asking us to write a function that returns a HTML table. right? That here let's talk about it. So it takes 4 parameters. Right? Each of these parameters represent a certain string. So the goal of this function is to take those 4 strings, right, and then create an HTML table that represents this right here. Right, the first row will be a header, and the next one will be just some plain data, table data. Right, and then the return value is just a string with HTML, right, just a plain string. Right, it's just like the name tag that we did earlier. Okay, so let's work on that together. Right, so create a function called HTML table. So let's do this. So right away, we should be able to define a function called HTML table, right? And then it takes 4 arguments, 4 parameters. Let's see what they're called. So it's called header 1, header 2, and then body and body. All right, so let's get those 4 in there. So header 1, header 2, body 1, and body 2. All right. And then the doc string, which is for minimal credit again. So the purpose of this is to generate an HTML table, generate a string that represents an HTML table containing, yeah, that's pretty much it. Right, so, and this HTML table is going to contain these 4 elements. Right, so it represents a HTML table with 4 elements, 2 by 2. Okay, so the arguments, there's 4 of them. Okay. Give me 1 second, folks. My projectors are overheating. For folks in person, see if you can complete the rest of the doc string. I'm gonna need like 5 more minutes.